My son Daniel phoned one humid afternoon to do something I never thought possible: rescind my invitation to his seaside wedding. His reason? Because his beloved fiancée, Chloe, just wouldn't feel relaxed if I showed up. I ended the call, poured myself a generous glass of Pinot Grigio, and quietly began sketching plans for what would soon become the most unforgettable wedding video the internet had ever seen. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from. But before we get there, let me rewind and explain how I, Linda Parker, a 61-year-old retired high school librarian, somehow transformed into the most discussed mother-in-law on social platforms in under 72 hours. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell it all started early Tuesday morning when my phone lit up with Daniel's name. "Mom, we need to chat," he said, using that practiced heavy tone he'd honed since childhood whenever he had bad news to deliver. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, though I already sensed the direction. Chloe and I have been talking about the wedding, and she's really overwhelmed. You know how brides can get when they want every detail flawless. I let him speak, though inside I already knew what cliff he was about to step off. Well, she doesn't feel comfortable with you there. She thinks your presence might make things awkward. Awkward. That was the word he chose. For 29 years I had raised this boy without help. His father had walked out when Daniel was 2, deciding parenthood wasn't compatible with the life he wanted. I worked late evenings and double library shifts to cover his tuition, his first car, his apartment deposit. I was the safety net. And after all that, I had to hear that a 28-year-old woman thought I was awkward. I stayed still, though my knuckles clenched around the phone. "And you agree with this?" I asked, my voice calm, measured. "Mom, please don't make this harder. It's only one day. We'll have a special dinner after the honeymoon, just the 3 of us." "Of course," I replied with utter serenity. "I understand completely." I heard his sigh of relief echo through the line. "Really? Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd be sensible." When the call ended, I stared at the glossy wedding invitation pinned to my fridge. Gold script letters: "Chloe Marie Reynolds and Daniel James Parker request the honor of your presence as they exchange vows at the Tides Resort, Charleston, South Carolina." The same invitation I'd helped him address because Chloe claimed her tendinitis flared whenever she held a pen too long. I removed the invitation, tore it neatly in half, and dropped it in the trash bin. Then I opened my laptop. What Chloe underestimated about me: I might be 61, but I've been on Facebook, Twitter, and later Instagram longer than she's even known Daniel. For 3 decades, I navigated cliques of entitled teenagers, dramatic friendships, and every variety of adolescent manipulation. If you think one smug young woman could outmaneuver me, think again. But first, I needed an ally. At exactly 8 the next morning, I rang my younger sister, Carolyn. Carolyn has always been the spirited one, reckless, mischievous, and forever drawn to anything resembling a scheme. "Lynn, what's wrong? You don't call this early unless someone's passed away." "Not dead," I said dryly, "just disowned." She demanded the story, and I told her everything. Each time I paused, she punctuated my words with furious gasps and muttered curses. "That ungrateful little weasel," she finally exploded, "after everything you did for him?" "Yep. So what's your plan? Because I know that tone of yours. It's the same one you used back when that kid tried to plagiarize his senior thesis." "I need you to gather some intelligence. Chloe Reynolds, 28, works at Madison and Hale Marketing downtown. I want her routine: lunch breaks, comings and goings, patterns." Carolyn whistled. This isn't just about the wedding, is it? She wasn't wrong. For the past 2 years, I had watched Chloe carefully maneuver Daniel further and further from me and from everyone who once mattered to him. She suggested I was critical. She said his college friends were juvenile. Every holiday was reframed around her comfort levels. And during dinners, she'd pepper in sly jabs about my cooking, my modest home, my outdated tastes. I'd swallowed it all for Daniel's sake, but clearly keeping quiet didn't keep him. Carol, what would you say if I had a video clip that might fascinate wedding guests? She chuckled darkly. I'd say, tell me more. 2 mornings later, I was sipping coffee at Harbor Street Cafe when fate handed me a gift. There she was, Chloe Reynolds, in broad daylight, leaning dangerously close across a patio table toward a tall, dark-haired man. And that man was not my son. Now don't misunderstand. I hadn't exactly planned to witness this, but something in Chloe's smug tone the night she'd answered Daniel's phone, informing me coldly that they had decided, had triggered me. For 3 days I'd observed her movements, and now here she was, practically sitting in another man's lap, laughing in that self-satisfied way of hers. I raised my phone camera. Click, record. 47 minutes of Chloe being very friendly with someone other than Daniel. When I showed Carolyn later that day, she erupted into such scandalous laughter, she nearly spilled her iced tea. So what's next? Tomorrow we're shopping for the perfect wedding gift, I replied. Thursday morning we strolled through Riverfront Mall like 2 ordinary suburban women comparing china patterns. In reality, we were orchestrating what one could generously call tactical revenge. Carolyn had already done her part. She'd chatted up the receptionist at Madison and Hale with some nonsense about wanting to surprise Chloe with flowers. From that, she learned Chloe's lunch schedule. Leave at 12:15, return by 1:30, like clockwork. The man from the cafe we'd discovered was named Jacob Benton, a gym owner whose fitness studio stood 3 blocks from Chloe's office. According to Instagram, he was married with 2 young children. His wife Allison posted motivational quotes and photos of the kids nearly every day. This is tangled, Carolyn muttered as we sipped lattes across from Jacob's gym. It's about to get simple, I said. At 2:45 sharp, Chloe appeared, immaculate in sleek workout leggings that looked pricier than my monthly power bill. She checked her phone, surveyed the street like a spy in a movie, and then slid into a black SUV waiting in the alley. Jacob arrived moments later, casual and confident, and got into the passenger seat. They're not even attempting to be cautious, Carolyn whispered. Why should they? She's convinced everyone I'm just the bitter old mom. I held up my phone again. Record. The SUV drove toward a quiet apartment complex on Willow Lane, Unit 305, Jacob's hidden second residence. We followed discreetly, watched them enter, logged the time, 3:19 p.m. Every Tuesday and Thursday, same pattern. Carolyn turned to me. Linda, what exactly do you plan on doing with all this? I looked at her, remembering years of her standing by me. When Daniel's father left, when I cheered alone at his baseball games, when I needed someone in the audience during every school concert. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, a wedding gift no one will ever forget. Friday evening, my small home office looked like an editing suite. Decades of making multimedia presentations for the school board had prepared me for this moment. 3 files, cafe meeting, gym rendezvous, apartment entry, each clip crystal clear, each timestamp precise. At 7:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. Daniel stood there with a sheepish smile and a bottle of Merlot. Mom, can we talk? He stepped into the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. I know yesterday was rough. Chloe feels awful about how everything happened. but her family's really formal. They've got these traditions. Her grandmother's particular about who sits where, who's included. It's not personal. I thought of Chloe's grandmother, whom I'd met once. She had been delighted her granddaughter had found someone with such a thoughtful mother. Clearly that detail never made it back to Chloe. "Daniel, sit down." He perched on a stool like a chastened teenager. "Please don't make this about you, Mom. It's their day." "You're right," I said softly. "It's their day, and I want it to be perfect for them." Relief washed across his face. "Really? You're not upset?" I reached across the counter, squeezed his hand, the same hand I'd held through every scraped knee, every heartbreak. "Sweetheart, all I've ever wanted is for you to be happy." He smiled, hugged me, and left, reassured. I returned to my computer. The video was nearly finished, but I wasn't done. I created a new online identity, Sarah Mason, a wedding photographer with a passion for honesty and love. Stock photos, believable backstory, inspiring quotes. Within days, Sarah had followers. Tomorrow, Sarah Mason would happen to capture some very revealing footage at a beach wedding, and the world would finally see Chloe Reynolds exactly as she was. Under a sky the color of sun-washed linen, the day arrived exactly the way the forecast promised it would. Warm, bright, and just breezy enough to make the palms sway along the seawall outside the Tides Resort. I parked 3 aisles back from the entrance so I could watch without being watched, the way a librarian learns to observe from the quiet. Guests streamed past holding gift bags and garment boxes, pausing for selfies under a flowered arch where a chalkboard sign welcomed everyone to Chloe and Daniel's big day. I knew the timing by heart because once upon a time I'd helped plan it. I wore a navy sundress, low heels, and the kind of camera that makes people assume you have credentials. Nobody questions a well-dressed woman with a professional body and a steady hand. Tourist, vendor, aunt of someone important. Any guess works as long as you keep moving with purpose. Inside the lobby, an ocean of coral chiffon bridesmaids and khaki golf shirt groomsmen crossed paths the way schools of fish do, all bright movement and no awareness of currents around them. I asked the concierge for directions to the bridal prep rooms, and he smiled like helping me was the most natural thing in the world. 3rd floor, one hallway labeled Sunset Suite for Chloe's entourage and Sunrise Suite for Daniel's. Laughter ricocheted from door to door. I didn't intend to linger, only to confirm that everything I'd learned was still on schedule, but then Chloe's voice cut through the chatter like fine glass. "Thank God we didn't invite his mother," she said, not even lowering her volume. "Can you imagine? She'd find a way to make it about her. She still dresses like it's a PTA meeting in 1995. A little chorus of giggles followed. Another voice chimed in, syrupy, sweet. "At least you won't have to deal with her much, different states and all." "Daniel doesn't know yet," Chloe replied, a smile audible in her tone. "I'll tell him after the honeymoon. The offer in California is perfect, and it's time he cuts the cord." I stood in the corridor pretending to adjust my lens, my heart steady, my spine even steadier. I already knew about California. Overhearing her confirm it, now simply locked the lid on the box. I took the elevator back down, stepped into the heat, and breathed in the salt. 2 hours to go. Public beach access sits just beyond the resort's private line of umbrellas and aisle chairs. Guests think they're on secluded sand, but the truth is South Carolina law keeps shorelines open, perfect for a woman with a camera and a plan. By 3:45, everyone had taken their places. The officiant, a genial man with a sunburned nose and a voice trained for microphones, welcomed the crowd with a few words about love and promises and families weaving together. Daniel stood at the front in a crisp linen suit that made his eyes look like deeper water. He kept rubbing his thumb along his palm, the way he used to do as a child when he pretended he wasn't nervous. Chloe appeared at the top of the boardwalk, radiant in a gown that shimmered when she moved. The bridal party flowed around her like a tide. I filmed sparingly, choosing angles that would matter later. Daniel's face when he first saw her, Chloe squeezing the maid of honor's hand, the officiant saying honesty and honor, as if the words themselves were shells he was handing them. I'm not a cruel woman. A wedding, even a flawed one, is still a ceremony where people mean what they say in that moment. I let myself feel that truth, then set it aside. They exchanged vows with all the right pauses. When the officiant announced, "You may kiss the bride," cheers went up, hats tipped, sunglasses lifted to dab tears. I captured exactly 3 seconds of the kiss and then lowered the camera. The point wasn't to ruin happiness. The point was to expose a lie. From there, the reception moved into the ballroom, where the air conditioning battled all the damp heat the guests tracked in. Cocktail hour grew loud with the clinking of glasses and the thump of a cover band tuning up. I kept to the edges, a shadow with a lens, catching snatches of jokes about the groom's ancient fantasy football league and tributes to the bride's impeccable taste. I recognized a handful of Daniel's old college friends, men with easy laughs who'd slowly stopped texting after Chloe labeled them immature. One spotted me from across the room and tilted his head like he was trying to place where he knew me from. I turned and recorded a waiter arranging champagne flutes in a perfect circle. Dinner, speeches, more speeches. A cousin toasted the couple's authentic love. The maid of honor said Chloe made every room brighter just by walking in. Daniel's best man told the story of how Daniel once drove 2 hours in the rain to help him change a tire at midnight. That's the kind of husband he'll be. Applause, whistles, glasses knocked together until white napkins ruffled like gulls. Then the dancing began. Their first dance was to At Last, the singer in the band leaning into every long vowel, like she had waited her whole life to sing them. Daniel kept his forehead resting against Chloe's temple, his smile small and private. You could forgive a mother anything for wanting to freeze her son's face exactly like that. I recorded a little, then put the camera down. Some moments didn't belong to me, even if the next ones most certainly would. At 9:32, Jacob Benton appeared at the edge of the dance floor. He wore the confidence of a man who believed in his invincibility. Chloe saw him, and for a fraction of a second, something flashed across her face. Something that looked like the spark when you plug in a lamp and it catches. They spoke for less than a minute. I couldn't hear the words over the music, but I didn't need to. The body language told the whole story. Chloe's quick glance toward the ballroom doors, Jacob's subtle nod toward the corridor that led back to the boardwalk. I slipped through a side exit I'd scouted earlier and positioned myself behind a dune, tall enough to block me from view while leaving the shoreline open. The band slid into a slower number, the kind that makes strangers dance like they've known each other since childhood. Farther down the beach, 50 yards, maybe a touch more, 2 silhouettes separated from the stream of guests and drifted into the harder-packed sand near the waterline. The audio out here wouldn't be perfect, but it didn't need to be. The picture would say more than enough. Jacob kissed her first. Not a hello kiss, not a goodbye kiss, the kind that makes time look elastic. Chloe didn't pull away. She leaned in. The camera in my hands never wavered. When they finally stepped apart, I caught fragments of their conversation when the wind shifted. 2 more hours and we can leave, she said. I told Daniel I'm getting a headache. My room's ready, he answered. Allison thinks I'm in Miami till Sunday. Perfect. Chloe replied. One last celebration. They returned separately. Chloe first with the head-down walk of a woman pretending to be deep in thought. Jacob 5 minutes later, checking his phone like any other guest sneaking out for air. I stayed where I was until both had vanished into the ballroom's glow. Then I took the path toward the parking lot and breathed for the first time in what felt like hours. Back at home, I transferred files to the laptop I'd staged on my dining table like a command center. 2 hours of wedding day footage joined the earlier clips. The cafe, the gym, the apartment door swallowing them at 3:19 p.m., and a handful of audio snippets I'd collected for context. I brewed tea so strong it almost stood up by itself, rolled my shoulders, and got to work. Editing isn't magic. It's patience with a sharp pencil. I built the timeline so that grace lived right beside truth. The soft beginning. Vows. The sway of chiffon. Daniel's hand on Chloe's back as if she were the only solid thing in the world. Then the split screen. Left side the first dance. Right side the cafe surveillance I bought from a manager who thought he was selling a fun surprise for the couple. Next, her voice from the Sunset Suite. Thank God we didn't invite his mother. She's clingy. She makes everything about herself. Paired with the shot of Daniel slipping her ring on. The final sequence. That beach kiss, stitched to the band's audio of At Last. Crosscut with Daniel laughing beside his groomsmen under the ballroom lights. Not because I wanted to humiliate him, but because that was the precise shape of the truth. 2 scenes inhabiting the same minute, as if the world had split. Meanwhile, Sarah Mason had been busy. During the week, I'd fleshed out her profile with a portfolio of candid wedding images from stock libraries and a couple of phone shots I'd taken at a stranger's ceremony in the park, used with permission, a bride delighted to be featured. Sarah posted quotes about honesty, tenderness, commitment. She built momentum through simple, sincere captions. Truth looks beautiful on everyone. Love is a verb. People adored her for saying what they felt but rarely articulated. By Friday night, Sarah had 48,000 followers waiting to see the special project she'd teased. A short film about what love promises and what it owes. It was 2:11 a.m. when I finished the final export. I scheduled Sarah's post for 7:00 a.m., set the phone face down, and lay in the dark listening to the ceiling fan hum. 5 hours from now, they'd be boarding a flight to Cancun. 7 hours from now, countless strangers would start sharing a link titled, Wedding Day, Truth. When love isn't enough. I slept 3.5 hours. It was enough. By 9:06 a.m. the next morning, the video had 2-point-something million views and a comment thread growing so fast the numbers looked like a slot machine. My phone erupted with calls, texts, pings from platforms I hadn't opened in months. I flipped pancakes, added blueberries the way Daniel likes, and let the alerts stack up. The film was exactly what it needed to be. Raw, elegant, and indisputable. People weren't just watching. They were recognizing something they'd felt in their own bones. At 9:47, the doorbell chimed. Carolyn burst in carrying a paper bag from my favorite bakery and a grin that belonged to a woman who'd found the best seat at the theater. "You magnificent woman," she announced, sliding the pastries onto the counter. "Have you seen the news?" "What news?" She commandeered the remote and switched to a local morning show. A full-screen wedding photo, Chloe mid-laugh, Daniel looking adoring, filled the TV with the headline, Viral Wedding Video Exposes Cheating Bride. Mystery Filmmaker Captures Internet. The anchor used that careful tone TV people adopt when they want to sound neutral, but are practically vibrating with interest. "The videographer remains unknown," he said, "but the footage raises questions about transparency, loyalty, and how modern weddings sometimes exclude important family members. Carolyn cackled. They're calling you the unknown wedding photographer. Channel 7 is trying to reach Sarah Mason for comment. Imagine that. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know it was you. Take it down or there will be consequences. See. I showed Carolyn. Looks like Chloe's having a banner honeymoon. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said, sipping coffee. I'm just a sad mother who wasn't invited. What would I know about viral films? The bell rang again, more tentative this time. On the porch stood a woman I recognized from Instagram, Jacob's wife, Allison. Online, she's all sunny captions and coordinated outfits. In person, she looked like someone who hadn't slept. Her mascara edged the rims of her eyes like bruises. Mrs. Parker, she asked, voice brittle. I'm Allison Benton. I think we should talk. I know what grief sounds like. I invited her in, guided her to the kitchen, poured coffee she didn't touch. My husband's in that video, she said. I thought I was paranoid. Tuesdays he taught a private class at 2:45, and I told myself I was being jealous. But the timestamps, the apartment door, I signed that second lease's check once because he said it was for expanding the business. She swallowed. I appreciate the clarity. I hate it, but I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it with the kind of sincerity that sits heavy in your chest. I didn't set out to wreck anyone's life. I wanted my son to know the truth. You did the right thing, she said, the words wobbling. I filed this morning. I brought the paperwork. My lawyer says your video is admissible. He says Jacob's public conduct and dishonest use of marital funds will matter. She looked at me, really looked at me, the way women do when they're deciding whether to trust one another with a piece of their heart. Your son deserved better than to promise himself to someone already living two lives, she said. After she left, I finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Daniel, 12 from Chloe, 5 from numbers with no names. The view count ticked upward every time I blinked. I let the calls go. If he needed me, he knew where to find me. In the only kitchen he's ever felt safe crying in. He showed up Monday evening, travel sour and worn in the way grief wears you from the inside out. His tan, what little he'd managed in 2 days, looked gray around the edges. The whole resort knew, he said, folding into the chair he used to drag across the floor as a kid. People were whispering. Someone asked Chloe for an autograph, if you can believe it. Like any of this is a game. I brewed coffee because coffee is sometimes the only bridge left when words won't cross. She says you hired a detective, he told me, eyes red, jaw tight. She says this was a vendetta because you're jealous, that you stalked her. What do you think? I asked. He stared at his hands. I think my mother isn't petty. I think my mother has never been anything but honest, sometimes to my teenage annoyance. He huffed the shred of a laugh. Then, is it real? The video? Yes, I said. Every second of it. He shut his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older. She told me it was stress relief, that the kiss on the beach was goodbyes, and the other stuff was helping her through cold feet. She asked me to move to California so we can start fresh, away from toxic online attention. What do you want? I asked, not rescuing him from the question. To believe her, he said. To believe that the person I married values me more than the dopamine hit of attention. But when I look at her, all I see are those scenes playing on loop, her laughing about you, her kissing him while I was 20 yards away. Silence sits differently when you share it with your child. It doesn't feel empty. It feels like a room where both of you can breathe. She accepted the California job 2 weeks ago, I told him gently. I overheard her telling the bridesmaids on the morning of the wedding, She planned to tell you after the honeymoon. His forehead tipped forward like the thought itself had weight. She already decided who I'd be. We sat until the streetlights outside blinked into their evening glow, and the neighbor's dog started the nightly argument with squirrels. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "Mom," he said, voice quiet, "did you make that video?" I looked at my son the way I've looked at him his whole life, seeing all the versions layered on top of each other, the toddler who cheered when bubbles popped, the fifth grader who couldn't find his music folder and sprawled on the floor in despair, the junior high kid who handed me a crumpled permission slip at 9:58 p.m., the young man who used to call every Sunday, before Chloe declared that habit weird. "No," I said, "I didn't make the video." His shoulders dropped in relief, so sudden it was almost a sob. I knew it. "I told you the truth," I said, meeting his eyes, "and I'll keep doing that." "What should I do?" he asked, helpless and hopeful at once. "I can't choose for you," I answered. "But you don't have to live inside somebody else's story." He hugged me then with the kind of hug he gave at 8 and at 18, and now again at 29, the kind that says thank you and I'm scared and I love you without any of the words. He left with a bag of leftovers and the spare key that had lived in the second drawer since he was tall enough to reach it. After his car tail lights dissolved into the neighborhood's steady dark, I opened my laptop. 8-point-something million views. 190,000 new followers for Sarah Mason. Tag after tag identifying Chloe. I closed the screen. Sometimes restraint is a mercy you extend to yourself. Wednesday morning brought another knock. Chloe stood there in a baseball cap and oversized sunglasses like a child playing at invisibility. Without waiting for permission, she pushed past me into the living room and paced like there was a metronome inside her chest set to panic. "You've ruined my life," she said. "My boss told me to take a leave. My parents won't answer my calls. Allison's filing for divorce and putting my name in the paperwork. I hope you're happy." "I'm sorry for the pain you're in," I replied, "but consequences don't check whether you're ready for them." "You hunted me," she said, pointing as if that could conjure proof. "You stalked me because your feelings were hurt." "Chloe," I said evenly, "if the roles were reversed, if Daniel had a second apartment and a woman he kissed at his own reception, would you want me to keep that from you? That's not the same." "It's exactly the same." She stopped moving, her anger rippling into something more fragile. "You make me feel small," she said, stunned by her own admission. "You ask questions no one else asks. You look at me like you can see the outline of a lie." "Then stop lying," I said, not unkindly. "To him, to yourself." She dropped onto the edge of the sofa, elbows on knees, chin in her hands. Beneath the entitlement and the vanity, I'd always seen glimpses of a scared kid, one who'd learned to choreograph herself into approval. It didn't excuse anything, but human beings are rarely only one thing. "Did you love Daniel when you married him?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. I did. Jake made me feel awake, like there was more, like I was sharper, funnier, braver. I thought I could have both lives." "Some choices block other choices," I said. "That's not punishment. That's physics." She looked up, eyes wet. "Can you get the video taken down?" "I can't. Even if I could, it's already everywhere. People screenshot faster than lightning." "So I'm finished," she said flat, as if reciting a verdict. "You're 28, I answered. "You're finished only if you insist on learning nothing." She stood. "Tell him I came here. Tell him I told the truth." "Tell him yourself," I said. "He deserves at least that." That evening, Daniel called to say she'd confessed to the affair, the apartment, the California plan. He sounded tired but resolute, a man who'd finally stopped arguing with reality. "I'm filing for annulment," he said. "My friend's dad is a lawyer. He says there's a path because of the deception. I should have seen it, Mom. I kept defending what wasn't defensible." "Loving someone isn't a crime," I told him, "but ignoring the facts hurts." "I owe you an apology," he said, "for letting her treat you like something to be managed, for choosing her comfort over your dignity." "You don't owe me anything but your happiness," I said, "and the promise you'll keep telling yourself the truth." "I can do that," he replied. "I'm going to stay with you for a bit while I figure things out, if that offer still stands." "The second drawer still has your key," I said, and heard him smile in the silence that followed. A few weeks later, while picking out tomatoes with Carolyn at the market, a young reporter approached me with a microphone and a hopeful expression. "Are you Daniel Parker's mother? I'm with Channel 7. We're covering the viral wedding video. Can I ask you a couple of questions on camera? There's a kind of crossroads you don't recognize until you're standing with your toes on the paint. I could deny. I could perform innocence. No one could prove otherwise. Or I could speak plainly and accept whatever rolled toward me next." "How did it feel not to be invited?" she asked when the camera's red light blinked alive. "It felt like grief," I said. "Every mother wants to witness her child make promises." "Did you know about Chloe's affair?" she pressed. "I knew enough to worry," I answered. "And I know the difference between meddling and protecting. Some people online think you might have been involved in creating or distributing the video. Any comment?" I pictured Daniel asleep in his childhood room in the days after the wedding, his shoulders finally uncurled. I pictured Allison holding a stack of papers with steady hands. I pictured the messages in Sarah Mason's inbox from strangers, saying thank you for reminding them that love and truth belong in the same sentence. "Sometimes the truth needs help finding the surface," I said at last, "and sometimes love means risking being misunderstood." "Are you admitting?" "I'm admitting I love my son," I said. Enough to make sure he wasn't living inside a pretty story that wasn't real. The segment aired that night. By morning, the calls multiplied. Talk shows, podcasts, a documentary team fishing for the angle that would make the internet blink again. Opinion writers argued about ethics. Commenters declared me a folk hero or a vindictive witch, sometimes both in the same thread. Hashtags did what hashtags do. Daniel watched it happen and kept standing next to me. "She's the reason I didn't build my life on a lie," he told a reporter who waited outside our porch until we returned from the grocery store. "I may not love how it happened, but I'm grateful it did." Chloe moved to California, job in hand, ring gone, chin up on social because that was how she'd learned to survive. Jacob transferred gyms and leased a smaller apartment by himself. The video crossed 10 million, 20, then more. Sarah Mason became a symbol more than a person. People tagged her beneath their own stories about secrets and ceremonies and the cost of silence. Inside our little house, life did what it always does when the spectacle passes. Went on. Daniel started therapy. He texted one of the old friends Chloe had labeled childish and grabbed a coffee that turned into reconnecting with 3 more. He took long walks at dusk and came home smelling like river air. He cooked dinner on Tuesdays because he said the ritual calmed his mind. He laughed again without checking a room to see who approved. Weeks later, as summer leaned toward fall, my phone rang with a California number I recognized. "Mrs. Parker, it's Chloe," she said, voice small, in a way ambition had never let it be. "I'm different. I'm working on it. I wanted to say, thank you." I did not expect gratitude. I braced for blame and got something else instead. "The video destroyed everything," she said, but it also kept me from living a life I didn't choose. I'm telling the truth now, to myself, to other people. I told my parents. I told my boss. I ended things with Jacob and I meant it. I hope you keep meaning it, I said, not to punish, but because truth is a habit like any other. You get better by practicing. I'm sorry for how I treated you, she added. I told myself you were the problem because you made me feel seen, and I wasn't ready for that. Being seen isn't the enemy, I said. You can build a whole life on it, if you let yourself. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet for a long time, the way you do after a thunderstorm, when you're checking whether anything important leaked. The clip still resurfaces across platforms now and then, half the comments arguing about privacy, and the other half about justice. I don't read them anymore. I don't need strangers to tell me who I am. I made a hard choice. It cost something. It also paid for something I could not afford to lose, my son's chance to build a life on something solid. Late one Sunday afternoon, Daniel texted from the living room where he'd been scrolling recipes with a woman named Emma he'd met at the farmer's market, someone who laughed at his jokes without checking whether anyone else was laughing. Dinner next weekend, he wrote. Emma wants to learn your lasagna. She says no one layers like a librarian. I typed back, perfect. I'll teach her everything that matters. And I meant it. Some secrets belong in the sauce. Others belong in the light. The real trick is knowing which is which, and having the spine to act like you do. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, please support it with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. I'd love to know, what city are you listening from? Share it in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see where our community is gathered. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next story.